The end of the Second World War brought about lots of change to the eastern countries such as Germany, Soviet Russia, and Europe. This change was influenced by the fall of Germany, the distribution of Germany's land and resources, and the return of men back to their home countries. As the population began to grow again, families started facing the issues of transportation and getting themselves around over the harsh and difficult terrain of Russia. Cars were still a new idea, even in the more developed Western countries, and therefore cars were not common in Soviet-era Russia. Design, production and buying a car were all extremely difficult tasks for the average communist family, and unless you were a communist leader or officer, a celebrity, or a highly skilled worksman, the chances of you ever owning a car were extremely low. Communist Russia focused the majority of its resources into building tanks and other military vehicles in order to rebuild the units of their army lost in war. Since everything was government-owned and ran, car companies were few, and the spare materials left over from the military construction trickled down a long stream of other needs, such as buildings and weapons, before reaching car manufacturing. This left very little resources, and only a small number of cars could be made in any given time. Most car parts either came from the abandoned German car factories taken over during the war, or had to be made by hand with the limited resources. The limitation of opportunity to build a car meant a limitation in opportunity to design one. Most Soviet-era cars resembled popular American cars and had the same body shape in design, just with a smaller engine and bigger, beefier shocks. The reduction in engine size was a result of the scarce materials, and the beefier shocks were required for the tough, mountainous terrain. Once a car was made, it was delivered to the purchaser, who most likely paid an unbelievable amount of money for it. To buy a car in this era, first you had to put a proposal to your place of work. This is basically a letter saying why you need a car. Then if your letter is approved, it is given to a trade union, who governs who gets what and which materials can go where. If it gets approved there, it is then sent to the government itself, where they check your background and history to make sure you attend all the communist parties and show up to work every day. After that, if you get approved and confirmed to be a good comrade, you then have a 10-year wait for the resources to come and construction of the car to begin and end. However, if you were an officer or a celebrity, you could easily bribe some trade unions and government officials to bypass some steps, getting you your car earlier. Some people paid up to 25% of the car's value in bribes in order to guarantee that they get a car. Another option was if you were handicapped. If you had a physical disability, the government would give you a free, one-cylinder car, that had to be returned to the government after 5 years because they tended to break down and explode after that time period. Also, cars were extremely expensive. The limited materials and build time added to the cost, and therefore only 4.7% of the Russian population owned a car in the 1900s. To put this in perspective, Alexander Petrovich, the government-appointed owner of one of the car companies, made 140 rubles in the 70s. A new car cost 6,030 rubles, so that meant if he wanted a new car, he would need to starve his family of 4 and live without electricity for 43 months. So obviously the huge majority of Russian civilians could not even dream of owning a car. Some popular brands in Soviet Russia were Lada, Gaz, ZIL, and Moskvich. With the rise of the 60s, the American industry began to produce sports cars and muscle cars, a new concept to the world of automotive construction. In communist Russia, only one sports car was ever produced and sold, and that was the Melkus 1000. Only a couple were ever built and sold because sports driving and having fun were concepts obscure to the hard-working and down-to-earth communist population of the time. But despite all these issues and problems, many people still wanted a car, so they would build their own out of wood and plastic and whatever other materials they could find.